Hello, I am Dawn Westmoreland, hailing from Asheville, North Carolina, the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains. I'm also hailing from WPVM LP FM 103.7, The Voices of Asheville. Each week, I have a show around workplace issues. And this week, I'm going to be talking about money. How important is money? Well, it's very important. I am under contract to buy a house in the next 10 days, and I have learned so much from my financial advisor about how to pay the house off soon. So I am welcoming Dr. Summer Watson. She is an unlimited potential coach, an uninhibited military spouse. Her spouse is a Marine, was a Marine, retired, and she's the owner of Core Women LLC. She is a doctor of psychology, author, podcaster, producer, live show host. And then Jen Fontanilla is a financial expert helping women create their ultimate life without worrying about money. Speaker, workshop trainer. Money is important, isn't it? Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Dawn.
Why is money so important in relationship to the workshop? Workplace.
I'll let you go, Jen.
Sure. I mean, when you think about it, next to health, I really believe that money is something just driving a lot of stress. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of emotion behind it. And so when it comes to the workplace, I mean, my gosh, it's such a broad thing to think about. But if you think about it in your personal life, in your personal finances, in your personal economy, household, whatever is going well or not going well, you can't, sometimes it's very, very hard to separate it, right? So you bring those thoughts, those emotions, those stress factors into the workplace. And so when things aren't going well on the personal side, it tends to go into that workplace. It takes your focus off of things. And so that's one example of why it's so important. And so, and vice versa, when we don't have a healthy work environment, a healthy workplace, the relationships we have with our managers, our bosses, our peers, our coworkers and colleagues, you know how it goes, like, oh, don't take work home. So, it's this beautiful balance that needs to exist, regardless if it's about money and depending on what side it's coming from, but it has to be really, really well balanced out. And that's a struggle in itself. And, when we go through those things, it can cause a lot of distress, but it doesn't have to be that way. There are ways to make it better. And so I think that's our goal, right? We want to have a great home life and personal life, as well as our career and work life.
I love that, Jen. And I want to piggyback on what Jen said in regards to it being so emotional, money being emotional, and it's tied back into our genes, almost our DNA. So it really is what we've learned, what's been modeled for us, and what that looks like today and how you apply that in your daily life. And so again, as Jen said, we can change how that looks. It's kind of like you're born with DNA, but the way that expresses can look really differently. So there's certain things that you can do that will impact that expression, so to speak. So for instance, what I'm talking about is you might have seen your parents kind of struggling with money, having a difficult time, not doing well with their money. And so maybe that's what you've grown up with. That's what you learned. That's what you saw. So what happens is, it's not that that can't change, but the way that you want to express that means that you need to look at money differently. You need to use your money differently. You need to perceive how you're applying and using that money. And so it really can look different. It's just a matter of how you want to take the time to learn those new skills that have to do with your money. So hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And Summer, I want to ask you this, because you brought up about our social conditioning, our, parents bringing us up and what we learned as young children. I grew up where my parents said, go find a job and work, trade hours for dollars. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I love this. Oh my gosh, so love this.
Yes.
I was brought up the same way. And early on, so even before I was able to get my worker's permit, so to speak, like at 15 and a half, I believe that's California law, it was 15 and a half. And prior to that, I had to take out the garbage, mow the lawn, do all these various things without an allowance. So what they were trying to teach me is the reward came from inside. It's not an exterior reward. So it's But yet when I came up into the ranks of counseling, there was this whole ideology of reward and punishment. So we got into this thing of, you need to reward your kids, you need to reward your kids. And I thought to myself, the more we reward them, it's going to be a sweater, a pair of jeans, shoes, a car. Where does it go from that? And so where do we find our internal reward? I'm going to pass this over to Jen because I see her nodding, going, yes, yes, yes.
I just love everything that's been said so far in relation to the trading hours for dollars. Oh my goodness. I grew up in a very conservative, traditional, family. My parents are immigrants from the Philippines. And so it's that same concept. And so when I started introducing this idea, like, hey, I'm going to work for myself and I'm going to do this years and years ago, of course, the first question from my mom is, do you get benefits? And then everything like, okay, if I'm paying for an event, a networking event or a conference or something that I'm trying to invest into myself, it's always these questions that you can see stemming from a traditional perspective. Are you paying? Does work pay for that? I'm like, I am the work. I am the company. There's no per diem here, there's no benefits. I gotta pay out of pocket. I mean, it's just interesting as I look back in my mind's eye, I remember those questions where there's this mindset, and there's nothing wrong with it, but there's this mindset, my parents are traditionally employees. They're both retired now, but you see how different it is based on the questions that you're being asked. And so now I look back and I think, wow, today's times, entrepreneurship is so in your face now. I mean, it's so much easier to get into it now than before because the information that's readily available to us is not easier. I mean, technology makes some things easier, but you still need a lot of the grit and skill and all these different things, the mindset to get us through it. But it's so interesting I look back, I think, I remember these questions. No, I pay for everything myself. And so now as an entrepreneur, you have a whole different set of things to think about. And how are you going to make it? How are you going to pay for this? And now it's no longer the concept of trading hours for dollars, but return on investment, making money residually, all these different ways to make money. And so I think that's the biggest thing to look at is you're still making money, but how is the money being produced?
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
Oh, goodness. I am really glad that you brought up about traditional because I hear it all the time from my mother, who I adore, who I love, and she wants the best for me. And every time I say, I'm going to do this opportunity, but it's a pro bono, are you going to get money? Because I think that might be the mindset.
Yeah.
So how do we get past this fear, this mindset, or, even get everybody who loves us to support us in this journey of being an entrepreneur, if that's what we desire?
I think that's a wonderful question, Dawn, because a lot of times you're not going to convert those people who come from a traditional mindset. And I don't think we're out there to convert that mindset, right? We are out there to live our best life. And that means that there are other folks out there who are doing the same. They are doing something that's unique, that takes courage, that is different. And so you start building your community. I think one of the biggest suggestions I would have is build that community, create a community of entrepreneurs around you, your peers. Because when I first started, as an example, my business, what happened was I saw a lot of my friends that are just some of my closest friends and people that I absolutely love just kind of fall off. And they work in traditional jobs. They love their jobs. They love me, but they don't quite understand what that looks like, what this new thing that I'm doing looks like. And it's a little scary. And so of course you're going to get those conditioned questions, right? Like Jen said, are you making money? Are you getting something for your time, effort, and energy? Well, yes, we actually are. We write the articles, we do pro bonos, we do this, and we get exposure. We elevate what we're doing, who we are, we get what we need, and we build, right? But they don't understand a lot of times that concept. And so what you do is you build that community around you of support of other entrepreneurs, because from that comes more connection, collaboration, elevation, exposure, and you start seeing your business start to grow. And so that would be my one of my number one suggestions. Jen.
I love that. I'm going to totally piggyback off of that. I think building that community that is around you that you can go to, because here's the sad reality. A lot of times when people are trying to go into this new territory, this new frontier, they traditionally, I see this all the time, where, oh gosh, my friends and family, how come they don't want to support me? And it's kind of like when you have a contact list. I love this analogy. You think about your database or your contact list in your phone, and you segment them, right? Okay, these are the friends. This is my gym friends. These are the PTA friends. It is no different from your friends and family. They belong in a different segment. First of all, they might not be your target audience. So if you can remember that, like Summer said, why are you trying to convince them? It's not your job to convince them. I mean, the best I can think that you can do is show up, take action, and just be wildly successful, however way you define that. And that's all you need to worry about. If they want to follow, if they want to like your post, if they want to attend your events, so be it. But your job is not there to convince the wrong target audience, because they probably don't even belong in there. So when you can focus your mindset and shift your focus on your network, that community that you're building around you, you're going to be way better off, because you're going to know who to go to. They're going to understand you. They're going to understand what you're going through, the questions that you're getting. They're going to know how to guide you as you're going through these things, because oftentimes those people have gone through it before you. Everybody's at a different level, but the thing is that we're there to support one another. And so when you have that to focus on, you kind of tend to like forget, like, oh yeah, these people over here, they don't support me, and that's okay. And that takes time. That takes skill set to build up to realize I don't need to get worked up and cry because these people don't support me. It's not they don't love you. A lot of times it just comes down to they don't understand the new world that you're trying to live in.
Absolutely.
Wow, what a powerful message, Jen, that you don't have to convince your loved ones, your friends.
You don't. No.
Yes,
you
what a
absolutely
powerful
don't.
message. Well, let's talk about the workplace. I've been in HR 30 years, so I've heard all kinds of stories of bullying, harassment. I've known people who've had to leave toxic jobs. I've known people who've had to live homeless because they had to leave a toxic job. So the question is, if somebody is working in a toxic job where they see no end to the toxicity and they want to leave the job, let's talk about money. What are some options?
Let me just jump in here for a real quick second, because there's a book that I just purchased that's I can't wait to dive into, but it's Stand Up to Workplace Bullying and Discrimination. Woo! Look at that. Solutions, tools, and guidelines. Guess who the author is?
It looks familiar. Well, thank you so much for purchasing my book.
I'm so excited about this book, Dawn. Oh my goodness. It will help so many people. Thank you for writing it.
Thank you very kindly. Yes, I saw a need to write it, and I did talk about money in it. So, and you both are the experts on the psychology and the financial matters. So
yeah,
let's talk about money in the workplace if we're not happy in the workplace.
Jen,
yeah, jump in here. So I know I went through this myself. So from my own personal experience, I will say, I think one of the first things that a person should do if they find themselves in this situation is to really, really think about, okay, the strategy part. There's also the emotional part. Am I ready to do this? Do I need some help? Because the bullying thing, that's a whole different component. So I'll talk about strictly the money. And so the first thing that you can do is like really assess where you're at and look at, okay, what income is coming in? And if you're planning to make a jump, what is the reality of you trying to replace that exact amount of income? Is the likelihood going to be more, or is the reality going to be, I know for me personally, I was so miserable. I was willing to take a 50% pay cut. It was that bad.
Wow.
And I was ready to shift everything. Okay, I'm going to cut back on this. We don't need this. And so you have to be realistic and ask yourself, with my current lifestyle, can I sustain this if I don't find a job that's going to pay me as much, if it's less? And then take a look at your expenses. What are the things that you can cut out? And whether you're going into a job, that's a little easier because you can count on that steady income coming in. But if you're going to this is what I did, decide to go into the world of like, I'm going to work for myself? That's a whole different strategy that needs to be planned out even more carefully. But at the end of the day, what the other things that we need to consider is, what does your reserves look like? A lot of times we want to jump ship because, again, we're focusing on, I'm miserable. I don't feel good. This is not making me happy anymore. I cannot take this. I hate so-and-so. We've all been there. And those are just us processing those emotions. But we also have to be very, very mindful. If we were to leave, if I don't find a job in 6 months, in 12 months, what's going to happen? Do you have at least that much to sustain your monthly expenses? Because the last thing you need is to create, not only on top of your emotional distress, you don't need to create more financial mess. And so the better you can prepare by assessing, okay, what's coming in, what is going out, what do I need to cut back on when it comes to expenses? Because there's all kinds of things that we will discover, okay, we don't really need that anymore. Okay, Summer and I have talked about this. You know, you still have these subscriptions on your phone app and other things that you're not using. You need to take a look at that, because you may think every single time it's just $1.99. It's just 99 cents. But as you add that up, there's a compound effect, and over time it builds up. And that could have been groceries for a month. That could have been it could have been lunch for a day. So you have to really, really take a look at that money, and then make sure those reserves are there so that you are creating that safety net just in case things don't go accordingly and when you want it to be. Because a lot of times that happens. You think, oh, it's going to happen next month, or I think, and then I see this all the time. We see this online. You see your friends post something and then they write, it didn't work out. I got the new job and then they laid me off 2 weeks later. And if we're so banking on that opportunity to work out, and we all hope it works out, but there's also that reality and probability it might not. And then that's okay, because if you plan properly, you won't create another hole. So I think that's one of the best ways to start. Look at the money and be realistic with where you are at.
I love that, Jen. Oh my goodness. I'm going to jump in here because as a military spouse, one of the things you become as a military spouse, especially for somebody like me who was in it for 21 years with my husband, who was a Marine, you become as a spouse a professional job seeker, a professional resume maker, somebody. So you're always looking for a job and you're always losing an income every time you move. But here's the thing, you can plan for that, knowing that you're going to be in transition constantly. So like Jen said, think about those reserves. Think about those days where, oh boy, you got some new orders, we're going to move, whether or not it be in country or out of country. And let me tell you, it happens. So I've been through it over and over. I've had that personal experience. But I want to talk briefly on the emotional component here regarding money and how that impacts you and your job and your mindset, right? Because it's not just about the whole, getting down to the basics of money, but it starts with your values. It starts with, what do I value here? What do I consider, something that I value? Is it the compensation? Is it the money? Is it the recognition? Is it happiness? Is it success? What are you looking for? What are your values? And Jen and I talk about this all the time. You can see her probably nodding her head. Yes, we talk about this all the time. Yeah, every day. Your values are your springboard. They are the foundation that you create to spring from in relation to job, relationship, all these different things. But if you understand your values, and that's going to align with the next job you find, with the job that you're currently in, it's going to lend to longevity of a job, longevity of a relationship. So here's the thing. If you're in a job you absolutely hate, I have a couple of suggestions for you. So first of all, switch your mindset. Yes, you might hate this. Yes, you're going to have to find ways to be in that job potentially until you can find maybe another job that suits you best. But again, I go back to, when you do look for a job that suits you best, you're going back to your values, right? Because your values are going to be that roadmap to what's going to guide you to that right job. That's going to help you find a good match. Secondly, it's, if you're in that job currently, find a mentor. Find somebody that aligns with you, that can align with you, that can help you grow while you're there. Even if you don't like the job, find somebody who's going to mentor you. Excuse me. Initiate a new project, perhaps. Because if you're there and you're trying to work your way out of that company, you never know what might blossom in that company for you. Connect yourself potentially if there's drama going on and that's what's like imposing, you feel that's what's imposing on your life or how you're feeling, stay away from the drama. Disconnect yourself from that. Find that mentor, find an opportunity, a new project perhaps. Change your mindset. Take care of yourself. Take some time for yourself. If you're not working, find ways to take care of you, meaning exercise, boating, kayaking. I know you kayak, right, Don?
I do. I'm going to go this week kayaking if it's not raining. I love it. So,
Yeah.
so grounding. So it's, just nourishes me.
Right? So there's so many things you can actually do, even while you're in a job, that's going to help you sustain that job, maybe even find new things within that job, maybe find a new beginning in that job. Mentorship is always so important. And whether you find that mentor inside that company or outside that company while you're going through this hardship, so important. Again, that's why for one of the first things I had mentioned, when you are an entrepreneur, start building that connection. Build the connection. Build your connection in that company that you're with right now. Find time for yourself. Anyway, so those are my suggestions, even though that's not directly linked with money. It is because it talks to or speaks to the longevity or your sustainability in that job. And if that means that you're going to be able to stay in that job for a longer period of time because you kind of have shifted your mindset, you've kind of come to terms with, I'm going to do some different things. I'm going to do some different things that might help me emotionally, physically, and to maintain this job, which is to maintain your income. And at the same time, you don't have to stop looking for jobs. You can always continue to look for jobs. I know that's something my mom always told me. Summer, don't leave a job until you get your next job. And let me tell you, when I was 15 and a half years old and I got that first job at a hamburger place that I really didn't like because of the uniforms that were brown polyester. I think you know which ones I could be talking about, right?
But I think I worked there too.
I said, I cannot stand this job. So I went out, I looked for another job, and I got a new job in 3 weeks. So let me tell you, I was determined. And if you're determined enough, you can definitely change your status, your work status, your money status. Anyway, so there you go.
Oh, Summer, thank you so much for the laugh. And if you're just tuning in right now, I'm Dawn Westmoreland, your host of the Empowered Whistleblower Radio Show. Each week we talk about work issues. And I have Dr. Summer Watson with me and Jen Fontanilla. So we're talking about workplace issues and money. So let's get back into working in a toxic work environment. And the person knows that there's no end to it and they want to go to another job. You mentioned earlier that they should start, preparing for that. And let me quote Dave Ramsey talks about in some of his books, and he's a financial consultant advisor, and he's pretty well known. He says that 80% of all people live hand to mouth. What are your thoughts about putting money away for that rainy day of leaving a toxic job or starting to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'll jump in this. It definitely, like we were talking about earlier, you have to build up that emergency fund and those reserves. And depending on your financial situation and how much you can put away is really going to determine how fast you can build that reserve up. Because there have been many times when I sit with people and they can barely put away $50 a month. So if your income needs in terms of expenses to be covered is, let's say, $5,000 a month, and you're only saving $50 or $100 a month, I mean, what's the reality of you building that 6 months to 12 months of reserves? So, that's why you have to take a look at what's going on with your finances, where either you figure out a way to infuse more money and make more income on the side, whether it's another side job. I know people that do Instacart. I knew people that got a part-time job at the mall, whatever it is, baking cookies. I mean, I've seen people get real creative nowadays. And so there are ways. There's so many ways. It's all going to depend on how fast you want to change your situation and turn it around. But you definitely have to build up that reserve, because I'm telling you, I've seen it where people didn't end up at the job, or they got fired prematurely, and then, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I don't, and then it's just this panic that sets in, the stress sets in, and so they're in a place now, it's like, oh my gosh, it's just creating more toxicity on top of the one that you were already in. So definitely that. And then same thing, if you're going to go into the entrepreneurial world, you got to plan even harder. You got to do your research. You got to talk to your community, your network, and ask them, like, what are the things that I need to be aware of? Reach out to other people that have done the jump, that have already taken those steps ahead of you. And hey, here's the question you should ask. If you had to do it all over and start, what would you have done differently? Learn from other people's mistakes. People are so willing to tell you their story, because they don't want you to repeat it. They want to see you do it better, because if you can collapse those timeframes and avoid those mistakes, and when it comes to the money, my goodness, you'll be so much further ahead. So take the time, like what Summer said, emotionally get in tune with that. But also you got to make sure the money part is down, because it's to prepare you and to help you avoid more financial stress.
Well said. We're down to the last few minutes. Summer?
Yes, what I'd like to say too, and kind of piggyback on what Jen said, I think it's really important as we talk about this, all this is up in your head, right? So get this down on paper, start writing this out, start making lists for yourself, start understanding your budget, start understanding where your money is. I think if you start writing that down, I know that when my husband, being in the military, and we were merging as a married couple, we had to look at our credit cards. And I wanted to look at those to pay those off. Got that down on paper, started paying one at a time, right? One at a time, but I didn't know how to do that, or how to get organized without listing that, without seeing that either on paper or on a spreadsheet that you're going to make. It made it so much easier, more clear, and it really brought things to reality. So
love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So budgets are important, I'm hearing, and getting out of debt is important, and being ready for that rainy day. Any other words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Well, at this time, our words, well, my nugget of wisdom, or what I call words of wisdom as well, would be just find a mentor. As I said, find a mentor, learn from those people, learn from how they did it, because once you start pulling in these different people and building a community, you're going to understand their process, which is going to help you build your process. And that's really important, because we're all uniquely different in how we build our process and what that looks like. Don't think that yours is going to be the same as Jim's, Michael, Sue, whatever. It's going to be different, but at least you're going to have some really good idea about how to build your foundation and your process.
Love it. I will just add, excuse me, as my last words is, I think one of the biggest areas you can also help yourself in is checking in with how your relationship with money is. We talked about it earlier with, I heard this from my mom, I heard this from my parents, and things that we heard growing up, money doesn't grow on trees, or rich people are greedy. Check in with that and really start getting in touch with, okay, how is my money mindset? Is it healthy, or does it tend to have a negative feeling to it? Because everything is driven by your money mindset. And so if we are only focusing on the logistics, all this is so important. The budgeting, the saving for a rainy day, the emergency fund, all those things are so important. But if our money mindset is a negative one, if we have a mindset of scarcity versus abundance, fear instead of courage, all these different things, it really can derail everything you're trying to do, or take even longer. So that would be my advice, that, start asking yourself, how healthy is my relationship with money?
Both of you, thank you so much. Dr. Summer Watson, Jen Fontanilla, thank you so much for giving us a psychological background around money around the workplace and giving financial advice. This is part one. We're going to have a part two coming soon. To my listeners, stay empowered. If you need any resources, how do they reach out to you? Both.
Okay, they can find me at Core Women on Instagram, and they can also find me at the Life, Love, and Money Show on Instagram as well.
Jen, real quick, you?
Yes, you can reach me on Facebook or Instagram at Jen Money Coach, Jen Money Coach, and same thing at Life, Love, Money Show.
Thank you. Have a great week.